Welcome to Board Talks, the live talk show for employees of Erasmus University. In each broadcast, we invite a member of the Executive Board of Erasmus University to join us to discuss issues of strategies and the mission of We also invite people in positions of key leaderships at and we hope today to enlighten you with a very special edition on the Recognition and Rewards program. I'm your host, Dr. Jeannie Servant-Miklos, and today for this special edition, I'm happy to introduce our new rector, Professor Annelien Bredenoord.
Thank you.
Also with us today is the project lead of Recognition and Reward and the Dean of the Faculty of Social and Behavioral Sciences, Professor Victor Beckers. Welcome. And finally, to help us understand how we could measure and get our heads around the quantifications of reward and recognition, Margar Schrijbos from the Erasmus Research Services. Let's get this special edition going. So what is recognition and rewards? Well, for many years, if you were an academic or a scientific worker within a university, you only had one way up, and that was publish, publish, publish. And if you published, that wasn't enough. You also had to publish in the right places. And then that meant that you would have to hunt for things like H-indexes or impact factors, depending on where you were publishing. But over the last few years, the NVO and other organizations have decided to make room for everyone's talent. So what does that mean? Well, in the last year, Dutch universities have got together to put a project plan for recognizing and rewarding different profiles, such as people who commit to education or people who want to make a big social impact. Erasmus University has joined in and has a project team now moving forward with a recognition and reward program, and this is led by Professor Victor Beckers. So I'm first going to turn to you, Annelien. Welcome, and welcome to Erasmus University.
Thank you.
So you've just joined us. In fact, you've been here 100 days as our rector. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How were your first weeks at Erasmus University, and dare I say, under the very peculiar circumstances of COVID?
Yes, well, actually, the first weeks were great, because then in October, we didn't have the measures that we have right now. So actually, it was quite a good situation and circumstances to start. So then I was here physically almost every day and had the opportunity to meet many of our employees, students. I just made some walks throughout the campus. And in November, it became more difficult, and I've been working from home like all other people. But I'm really very positively impressed by the Erasmus University and the people, and also how it is connected to the city of Rotterdam.
So speaking of Erasmus, why us? Well,
actually, the motto of Erasmus University, making minds matter. I think that is really important. That is also, if we want to stay relevant for the 21st century, then it's not just about knowledge production and not only about teaching, but it has to have societal relevance. So we have to educate a group of new leaders that can participate in the grand societal challenges, and we have to provide knowledge that can help to solve some of the problems that we have both in the Netherlands and also internationally. And I think Erasmus University is one of the leaders in this field.
So talking about social impact, the recognition and reward dossier, is that an important thing for you? Is that something you really care about?
Yes, that is one of my key priorities, because I think that it's an important step in focusing less on only research and journal citation factors, and that you think of, okay, so what is the research question that I want to answer? Is this a societal problem? And who do I need to collaborate with? So your mindset will be different. And I think I've been working 15 years in medical schools and medical faculties, and particularly there in one of the leading journals, in The Lancet. 10 years ago, they initiated a discussion about all the waste in medical research. So there is done all kinds of research that never reaches patients, that is never validated. It's published in Science and Nature. It has never been validated in the real world. And then why are you doing those kinds of studies if you're not validating it, if it doesn't lead to new treatments? So that made me aware that we have to broaden actually our vision, and also broaden the way that we reward our researchers.
Okay, thank you very much for that very personal touch and introduction. There's a lot of people watching this show who are maybe not already on our tenure track or who may be our junior employees. So Victor Beckers, could you please explain to us what is recognition and rewards in a way that all our employees can participate in this discussion?
I think it's important when looking at the motives behind recognition and reward is that there are two important reasons. One is the reason which already was mentioned, the one-sidedness in terms of career paths, that the only career path is if you are very excellent in research. And the second motive for setting up a recognition and reward has something to do with the fact that increasingly all kinds of demands are put on the university and also on the individual researcher. Somebody should be excellent in research, education, in management, and also create social impact. And this piles up in terms of burden and also in terms of work pressure. So the second reason is that we should also try to see how we can make use of the qualities of the different people within the university. So somebody who is more excellent in education should also have the opportunity to make it, for instance, a career or more in social impact. So also in terms of how to lessen the systemic work pressure in the university, it's very important that we look at a more differentiated way at the talents that we have, and also to see if for the different demands that we are facing in terms of excellent research, education, management, but also impact, that also career paths are being developed. So that's one important aspect of recognition and on board, looking at a differentiated way at talents. The second one is that you say, okay, if you look at those talents, you can see that in order to accomplish goals in terms of research, impact, etc., and also to divide the burden, it's very important to see how we can build up teams which are composed of people with different profiles, different qualities and competences, so that we as a team can manage the specific goals which we have to accomplish. So that is the second important issue also in the approach. And in order to make those teams function, but also to give room for everyone's talent, we think that leadership and leadership development is also very important.
Okay, thank you, Victor. That sounds like quite a broad program. So, Margot, the research services have been a key body within our university to keep track of how everybody's doing on their research production. So how do you see your role and your team's role in the new world that's being created by Anneleen and Victor?
Yes. Well, I think it's multitude, actually. One of the things is that we're quite intensively working on metrics, on responsible metrics, to support this move towards more recognition and rewards and diversification. And there it's mostly about moving away from the sole focus on age indexes. So it's really about using a multi-method approach, multiple types of indicators, which support the personal narrative of that researchers have, and also that is being brought together in team science. And there I also see a big role of Erasmus Research Services, that we are of course also providing all the support together with the schools in the area of the subsidies. And also there you see that external partners are asking us more to act in teams and to collaborate with external parties, and this is part of what we want to move towards as university, where we want to enhance also different profiles instead of only the sole, the past form of what a talent used to be like.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, as I understand, there has been a pilot program to try out some of the ideas behind recognition and rewards, and we've actually got some film footage to show some reactions from employees that joined in this pilot.
Erkennen en waarderen. Ja, wat vind ik daar nou van? Nou, ik vind het in ieder geval een heel stuk realistischer. Want als je in de praktijk kijkt, dan zijn medewerkers toch vaak meer betrokken bij onderwijs en anderen meer bij onderzoek. En weer een ander bij management of impact voor de society. Allemaal onderwerpen die eigenlijk volgens het formele personeelsbeleid in het verleden aan iedereen werden toegekend. Dus ik denk ook, als je dus mensen op hun kracht inzet, dat je een betere teamprestatie kunt verwachten. Ja, en bij teams moet ik natuurlijk altijd aan een voetbalteam denken. En ik zie dan dat wij in het verleden eigenlijk alleen maar multifunctionele spelers inzetten. Terwijl tegenwoordig met het nieuwe beleid ook gewoon verdedigers kunnen worden aangesteld, middenvelders, aanvallers en zelfs een keeper. In het verleden zetten wij bij toerbeurt een veldspeler in de goal voor taken als opleidingscommissie, als onderwijsdirecteur of opleidingsdirecteur zoals het tegenwoordig heet. Ook faculteitsraad en waar ik nu zelfs in zit, de examencommissie. In het nieuwe beleid wordt ook die keeper erkend en gewaardeerd. En dat noem ik consequent. Dat vind ik een belangrijke verbetering ten opzichte van het oude beleid. Nou ja, en daarnaast denk ik dat we ook met het nieuwe beleid meer ruimte hebben voor vernieuwing. Als je met name in het onderwijs toch heb je weinig tijd om alles voor elkaar te krijgen. Heb je dan een langere periode, dan wordt het makkelijker om ook te investeren in vernieuwingen. Dus bent u het als panel met mij eens dat het nieuwe beleid meer realistisch is, meer in overeenstemming met de werkelijkheid, meer consequent, ook alle teamprestaties waardeert en tenslotte ook nog kwaliteitsverhogend is. Het gaat veel meer van de kracht van de mensen uit. Dan ben ik benieuwd hoe u daarover denkt.
Wat voor mij heel positief is aan erkennen en waarderen zijn de verschillende functieprofielen die opgesteld zijn. Zelf werk ik in een managementprofiel en dat stelt mij in staat om op een meer formele wijze dan vroeger aandacht te besteden aan andere taken naast de onderwijstaken en de onderzoekstaken die ik doe. Waarbij ik ook het gevoel heb dat de andere taken, in mijn geval voorzitter zijn van de examencommissie, ook gezien en gewaardeerd worden. Daarnaast vind ik het prettig dat onderdeel van erkennen en waarderen is om mensen in een team te beschouwen en per team te bepalen waar krachten liggen van mensen, zodat iedereen bezig kan zijn met zaken waar hij en zij goed in is en ook passie voor heeft. Een vraag die ik graag aan u als panel zou willen voorleggen is het volgende. Je zou je kunnen voorstellen dat nu we tegenwoordig een vrij krappe bekostiging hebben van ons onderwijs, dat mensen die een onderwijsprofiel hebben naar verhouding ook relatief weinig tijd hebben voor hun taak. En ik vraag me af hoe u daarnaar kijkt. Dus hoe u borgt dat er binnen zo'n onderwijsprofiel, gegeven de relatief krappe normuren, toch voldoende tijd is voor ontwikkeling en vernieuwing. Een andere vraag die ik u zou willen stellen gaat over de beoordeling van individuele.
Okay, Victor, so I'd like to have your reaction on these commentaries from the staff, please.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that both persons underline, say, the assumptions which lay behind recognition and reward, because they really recognize the talents and the qualities of those two persons, and they feel happy that they are recognized. So it's good to hear that they really are in favor of it, and it is also important to express that what they also put forward is that when you look at the soccer team, not only the most important player in the soccer team is the goal getter, but it's the whole team with different qualities of the team players, which really make up the results of a team. And what is also very important for us, also within my faculty, is that we thought that we should also create a kind of level playing field, that everybody who wants to discuss the possibility of obtaining a different profile also have the opportunity to have a formal discussion on that, and that the discussion about, say, the profile is not something in terms which can be realized in an informal talk with a supervision with your supervisor, but that there is a real level playing field which is also very transparent. So that is also very important, and also, but also in relation to the remark on the education, I think what you normally see is that for all the educational tasks there are norms which apply, for instance, for giving education. But what you see within a team is that you can also say, in terms of the amount of time which has to be spent on all the different tasks, you can also see if some additional time can be reserved for instance, in educational innovation, and that somebody else takes up the other tasks, so that you can also create something of communicating vessels within a team, which enhances the overall team results.
Thank you very much, Rector. Now I'm seeing questions coming up on my screen, and this question actually dovetails nicely with another question that we received by email before starting this event, and also with a nice article that was published in Erasmus magazine this morning. Oh, and I see another question here, again, on the same topic, and these are all PhDs, postdocs, lecturers, and senior lecturers, or otherwise known as junior teaching staff or early career academics. But whereas somebody, say, with a PhD or a postdoc might be aspiring to get to the tenure track, that's not necessarily the case for lecturers and senior lecturers. And that's for all the faculties across, we need the teaching staff as well across the university. So what can recognition and rewards do for junior staff, junior teaching staff, and early career academics?
What you see is that recognition and a reward is, at this moment, primarily focused on the traditional academic staff in terms of assistant professors and associate professors, because they are confronted with these increasing demands. But at the same time, you see that there is also a group which also is attracted by recognition and reward, especially the junior staff. And I think also in terms of the perhaps a further elaboration of recognition and reward, we could also explore what this especially mean for them. And a number of things pop up. I think that it is important also, for instance, for PhDs and postdocs, that they also have the opportunity to be engaged to some extent in education, or that they have the opportunity also to explore what social impact is. That so that also PhD and postdoc programs are being organized that in a more, that there is room also to explore other qualities and talent. And what also is important is that with this group, we also explore how leadership and leadership quality and leadership training can also help them to make a next step in their career, because we see that leadership is not only in terms of management, but it's also leaderships in taking your own career further. And I think that this discussion should also be organized about, okay, what do you need to make this next step in your career as a PhD, as a postdoc, or as a lecturer. And I think this is something which we have to explore more in detail. So it's also important to understand that the vision on recognition and reward is a vision which gradually evolves also in relation to the questions and also the needs that also come up in these kind of discussions.
Thank you very much for that answer. Now, Annelien, you were once a young researcher, and you're heading a broad church within Erasmus University that includes young, ambitious researchers, but also we have a whole host of teaching talent who are lecturers and mainly lecturers, in fact. And we also have a lot of employees who are supporting us, and not just people on tenure tracks. So what's your vision for these people?
Well, actually, I would like to echo what Victor is saying. First of all, when this is also an innovative program, our recognition and rewards program, and it's actually now first implemented and experimented with in Dutch universities. And I think we at Erasmus University, we have a quite clearly outlined program already, but it's new. So we have to start somewhere, and the decision has been made to start at the assistant professor level. And I think that's completely understandable, also for the reason that you don't want young academics to get locked in a certain career path too soon. Because if you would have asked me, I thought when I was 23, I started my PhD, or 24. I've been teaching I was a junior teacher for 2 years at Leiden University. Then I moved to a PhD position. Then I've been abroad for a while. I was short time a postdoc. And then I became an assistant professor. And first I had a more educational profile. But I found out that actually I was really good in focusing on research. If you would have asked me this 5 years earlier, I wouldn't have known. Maybe I was also a bit insecure about whether I would be good enough to be so focused on a certain question. Or so I think it's also good that the starting early career academics, that they get the time, that we create space for them, but also that they give themselves the time also to find out, what do I like, what do I would like to develop, what kind of career path do I see for myself. So I would really say don't lock it up too soon, too early. And then I think there's a second problem, and that's that's actually another discussion. That's the underfunding of universities, and the underfunding particularly of our teaching staff. And actually, I do have good hope that with the announced additional spending of Dutch government, that we have additional budget, and that we can use this particularly for the early career lecturers, that we can offer them earlier career possibilities, fixed contracts, etc.
So, based on your experience, you've had a teaching career, you've had a research career. Yeah. What are the big lessons that you draw from that for people who are hearing you and starting out, in the PhD?
And then I had a more impact kind of career, actually. And then finally, I became head of a department, and it was more like leadership. So I also think that it's important that recognition and rewards doesn't mean that you have to choose one, and then that is it for the rest of your life. I think you could also say, I'm focusing on research, and maybe after a couple of years, you find out that you want something else. And because a lifelong career can take up to 30, 40 years, so why focusing only on one? So I think there can be a variety. For me personally, I've been focusing on research, and that was also why I think recognition and rewards is so important. And at a certain moment, I reached the top of what you can reach in the old world of. So I was first author in Science, and on a publication on the ethics of organoid technology. And then the day after, nothing happened. And 6 months later, nothing happened. And then I found out, okay, but it's not this publication that is my message. My message is that I want laboratories to think about the ethical issues when they are creating organoids. And I want responsible practices in biobanks. And so I wanted to reach something else. And then actually I moved slowly to working more on impact, being in ethics committees, doing more like consultancy work in laboratories and with medical doctors, because and of course you need to do research because that is your intellectual input, and that is what you're based on. But that was actually my shift. Yeah.
Now that's interesting, talking about impact, because it's something that we hear a lot. It's very topical. Part of it responds to the moment we live in and the challenges, the unprecedented challenges we're living with. Part of me worries that it gets thrown around quite easily by universities. Oh, we need impact, 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 without always, you seem to have thought a lot about what impact means. So how are you going to translate that vision to the university?
Yeah, well, first I would like to say something, because there are many misunderstandings, but there is one big misunderstanding, and that recognition and rewards would be some kind of a flattening down program, that we don't want excellence anymore, or that we can just do something, so that there is some flattening, and this is really not the case. So we are still a competitive organization. We still want people to make the best version of themselves, be it as a teacher, as a researcher, as a contributor to societal programs. So I think it's really important that people don't think, oh, it doesn't matter, they don't see any efforts anymore. We do see it. It's still very important. Also in a research profile, it's still valued if you're publishing in certain journals, etc. I think it's really important that it's, as Margot already said, there's not one sole career path, there's not one throne, but there will be many thrones together. And the same is about the question of what do you mean with impact? So I know it from my fields. I can describe quite clearly in bioethics what impact could be. But this is just an emerging discussion that we are having right now with the faculties and with the research groups, because it will be very difficult to have one definition of impact. And actually, we might disagree based on our worldview and some convictions, whether it's positive impact or negative impact. Maybe something that for me is really positive impact, for you is not so positive, because we can have different worldviews. So I think it's important to make some. We're thinking about giving projects and examples of what we define as positive impacts, and that we start dialogues about best practices, good examples. But it will be difficult to make one definition. This is positive impact. We won't reach that.
That's a very interesting point. So, Margot, is impact in the eye of the beholder, or can we actually measure this thing?
I think there are many routes indeed towards societal impact. So you could either think of ways in co-creation with external parties, but also being invited for policy reviews or have discussions with the parliament, or citizen science acting together in field labs. There are so many routes, and there's just not one, I think, clear indicator of what is the route towards open science. And of course, there's also towards impact. And of course, there's also one of the things that is being discussed currently in the project of Arwin van Buren on how to measure societal impact. But I think in the end, it all comes down to the team science aspect. And that as a group together, you take the responsibility to say, okay, we're working on this impact agenda, and define based together what is the narrative and where do we want to judge upon. And then I think there are multiple routes towards doing so. And perhaps also worth emphasizing there is what I think we should be aware of is also with that we've recently introduced our new research information system, PURE, which gives multiple opportunities for other ways to put your scientific output there. And I think that is something, that we should be aware of and see, okay, how can we use that also to, define what kind of indicators we can use.
Thank you, Margot. As far as I understand, the PURE system, that's something that the scientific staff use. So I'd like to go back to the question of whether you have a vision for all our support staff and all the people who are not actually doing any research. Let's start maybe with Margot. Do we have any way to measure the impact of non-scientific staff?
That's a good question. Do we have any ways to measure their impact? I think it's in our regular P&D cycle to do so, to have the discussion with them. How are they supporting this progress towards impact and towards recognition and rewards? And for the rest, I think it's more currently about awareness raising about what could be their role, and that we're teaming up there together. So that is also for support staff that they're not like that they're on an equal level and also valued for their role and their equal role in helping in our university to achieve societal impact.
So that we're all kind of co-creators in the societal impact of this university. Yeah. That's a beautiful image. And I do have some questions about the societal impact. As someone who's been involved in charity and development work for 15 years, I do that, and the people who work with me in the charities that I've been working with, we do that because we care. Because our heart speaks to these causes, that we dedicate our time, and very often it's unpaid time. So this is unpaid labor that we put into charity and development work. Now, there's an excellent colleague from the US, Professor Paul Gorski, who writes about the burnout suffered by Black activists when well-intentioned people from privileged groups come into their associations or charities because they want to make an impact without always having their ears open to people who've been trying to make an impact for a long time. I'm worried that in the great intentions that are behind this idea of rewarding societal impact, it might push some people to want to make an impact at all costs, or thinking, maybe my research career didn't work out so good, I'm not a great teacher, where's a charity I can join, or something like that. So how do we avoid that this leads to some kind of instrumentalization? So maybe I'll start with you, Annelien.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to emphasize that we are and still remain to be a university. So actually our pillars where we are focusing on our activities are research and education. So once you're thinking, actually, I don't like research anymore, or I don't want to do teaching, and you start to be an activist or setting up charities, I think that's completely okay to do, but maybe that's not what you should do as an employee. So I think it's also important to define with each other that also in an impact profile and in a teaching profile, you're doing research, because that is the intellectual basis of your activities. So it's not actually, and I think this is also one of the misunderstandings of what it is, recognition and rewards. It's not that we start to be something else than a university. We remain a university, and we start valuing teaching, education, and taking this as an input for societal translation.
So this takes really some work, although you've already indicated that there's not one definition of impact. Yeah. There are clearly some limits as to what is going to be considered impact or not by the university.
And there will be vulnerabilities. For example, once you start working with politicians or with human rights activists, then maybe it requires some capacities, and that you speak some language that you haven't learned yet. And I don't think we should be afraid to do so, to innovate, to experiment, and then it might be the case that you're making a mistake, or that you are criticized by some social groups. And then I would say also to each other, to the community, let's not be afraid to experiment and to innovate, and let not also be too critical to each other once you're making a mistake, or once you've been trying it, and then that you're saying, okay, well, apparently I wasn't that good at it, or I didn't see the vulnerabilities of doing this. I think we need to give each other some leeway also.
Room to fail and learn.
Exactly.
Now, Victor, as Dean, you're also Dean of Social Sciences, and you also have a long scientific career behind you. And
perhaps ahead of me, I don't know. So this is near the end of my career, I hope.
He's still young.
Behind, present, and in front of you. Yeah. So I'm wondering, there has been this, especially in social sciences, and especially in Holland, a strong push for axiological neutrality. That is, science is neutral, we don't engage. Now, this profile and societal impact, does that mean that you're seeing more room for engaged scholarship?
Yes. What you also see is that, for instance, in the impact profiles that we have within my faculty, there are several, say, domains of social impact, or several trajectories of impact. And one is that social impact is also created because we as researchers collaborate with societal partners in relation to all kinds of policy problems or societal challenges which we have to relate to in terms of climate change, in terms of energy transition, or in terms of social inequality. So I think that impact can also be created by seeking the collaboration with societal partners, but also with companies and also with government, etc., in terms of trying to bring knowledge, experience, insights together in relation to these societal challenges. And that is a rather engaged way of doing research. And I come from public administration, and I come from a tradition in which we always were doing research in strong collaboration with societal and governmental partners, and that really also enriched our thinking. And I think that is very important. At the same time, but you also say there are a number of vulnerabilities, but you should be aware of that and make those vulnerabilities transparent and have to discuss them. But I really think that collaboration of the universities with society is very important, and we do also do this, for instance, in terms of the convergence initiatives with the Erasmus University and the Delft Technological University, to seeking the collaboration in relation to all kinds of societal challenges, and that really asks for a rather engaged way of doing research.
And Margot, how could we measure this collaboration with societal partners?
Yes, I think there are multiple ways to do so, because there, of course, are routes where you could say, okay, this is what we do in joint publications, but also what you could see that we are acquiring in competitive funding together with external parties, but also how often they refer to you when you've provided input for them. So again, I would say it's really, there are multiple routes here, and it's all about the narrative, and it's all about what as you as a team and think that is the best way of your research to have the best impact, and how what is the narrative behind it, and what kind of indicators support that narrative. So in that regard, I would say it's both a mixed method approach of quantitative and qualitative way of measuring that. Yes.
I know you've been quite a proponent of open science and moving Erasmus towards being a key player in the open science debate. Do you see a convergence between this issue of measuring societal impact and open science?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. For me, open science, and then I have to quote someone, because it's a true open science practice, right? My coordinator Antonio Schettino always says open science is just science done right, and open science is really about increasing your impact, your trustworthiness, your efficiency, and your quality of your research, and in that regard. Open science, and also doing that more in collaboration with citizen science, is an important pillar of open science, is definitely a part of increasing your impact, and also a part of recognition and rewards. And we recently started the Open and Responsible Science program at Erasmus University under the lead of the academic lead of Percy Huygens. And there we really want to stimulate the awareness on open science practices and to develop a common view for Erasmus University on open science. We're doing that together with a broad group of academics. And there, also discussion on the relationship with impact and the relationship with recognition and rewards is very evident. Some things that I think are already in the recognition and rewards outline are examples like, we would like to stimulate that open science also becomes a part of job applications and recruitment, but also in the regular P&D talks, that open science is a topic to discuss how people are pursuing that. And also here, I think the opportunities that Pure now offers to also identify different types of output, for example, how many open access journals have you been publishing in, how many open data have you been publishing? I think this is really relevant to have better indicators for this move towards open science.
Okay, thank you. And Yeah, indeed. There's also great support, including financial support from the university for publishing open access. So it's becoming easier for us to, it's taken a while, but it's becoming easier for us as scientific staff to get our heads around it. Now, one thing I've been thinking about is you've been talking about engaged scholarship, the right to make mistakes and to fail. We live in a very precarious public sphere where the slightest mistake can be deconstructed by the whole internet, especially we're encouraged. I can see now in Pure that our social media is one of the things that's included in what's measured. But of course, not everybody is a social media talent, and your mistakes are there for everyone to see when you make them in the public sphere. So how are you going to protect, or rather to create a place where people can learn from their mistakes rather than mistakes being career enders?
Well, I think that being active as a scientist on social media platforms, that is even a completely different discussion, because of course also this requires certain skills. And there are really some do's and don'ts when you're twittering. And I do think, well, some people, and I think particularly the younger generation, is so used to using these kinds of platforms. But maybe my generation and the groups older than me, we're not, because we're only used to it for like 10 years. And then I would still recommend to have contact with the communication departments. And to just, I had many years ago also just a small interview training, just some explanations that you have Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and that's all already for the older people, and which audience is using which kind of platform. So also here, we should not be naive in using those instruments. So it still requires some thoughtlessness that you have to think about. So what am I doing? What is my message? What are my aims, particularly when using social media platforms? And then if you are using this, and particularly we had this recent discussion about Marion Koopmans, who is, I think, a great example of that she has societal impact with her expertise and with her knowledge. And if there are then attacks from society, then we, as a community, are very fiercely will actually protect and explain and applaud for what she is doing, what people like her are doing. So I would really encourage, but also it is, don't do it naive, but get prepared to do so.
And I can vouch for the community response, having been on the receiving end of some of these comments. The community really does come together, and that's really a beautiful thing to watch. Yeah. I'd like to launch a final question at you, Victor, if I may, and that is, when we're building a profile, I wonder if somewhere in there's this idea of almost branding ourselves. It's a kind of branding exercise that becomes almost like a permanently on switch. I must always be on Twitter, or always be always focused on publishing towards the broader public, and that there becomes a very thin barrier between public and private person at the university, already a barrier that's been challenged by COVID, but that we're always on, always putting a show of ourselves.
Yes, I think that this is this boundary between the private and the public is becoming more becoming vaguer, and I think we should be aware that there are also a number of vulnerabilities, also because the distinction between what somebody as a private person says and as a public person says is becoming too vague, and we should also really protect people in their role, and I think that's very important.
Okay, thank you, Victor. Now, thank you all for your contributions. Before we close off, I'd like to ask each one of you in 30 seconds to give me your vision for how this recognition reward trajectory is going to work out in the next 10 years. Margot, you're first.
Yes, I envision that in the future we will have two teams working together towards societal impact, and that everyone has his individual strength in that, and indeed that this individual strength is celebrated, and that would be my vision.
Thank you very much. Victor, what's your vision?
My vision is that we are now embarking on a change trajectory. And I think it's very important that we are on this trajectory all together, and we should really work together in trying to elaborate and experiment with recognition and reward. And in the end, I hope that two things will be recognized: that we really are able to recognize the variety of talents within a university. And that we really make an effort in terms of pushing forward team-based science also to move from this individual approach to a more group-oriented approach, because I think that this is the only way in which the university can really meet different demands that come from society in terms of research, excellent research, education, and also societal impact.
Thank you very much. Annelien, your closing statement?
Yes, well, in one of the LGBT cafes in Utrecht, when you come in, there is a big slogan: go where you are celebrated, not tolerated. And I think that is really quite a nice summary of what we want to do with recognition and rewards. We don't want to tolerate certain career paths and only celebrate the impact factor path, but we would like to celebrate a more diverse group of people that make the best, that really push themselves on their talents.
Thank you for this very beautiful final analogy. That was our show for today. If you want to find out more about recognition and reward, you can go on the website, and there is a page specifically for that. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope we can see each other soon on campus, and I wish you a very successful 2022.